Welcome to the Jon Weberg Show. Welcome, everyone. My name is Jon Weberg, and this is the Jon Weberg Show, where you're going to go ahead and learn how to not just better your life, but also to build a legacy. And what that means is basically the entire reason why I'm starting this podcast and why I'm starting this show and why I'm venturing in this different area I've never explored before is because I see so many people around me. I see friends, I see family, I see my community as a whole, and I see the world as a whole struggling with a lot of different things. Many of you know, maybe you don't, that right now what I'm working on is a book. I have a book coming out. It might be out by the time that you're listening to this, but the book's called 19. And in 19, what I do is I go through some of the biggest lessons learned through myself and through things that I've researched, that I've studied, and from learning from other people, that have the 19 biggest lessons that have changed my life and that I see that have the potential to change other people's lives, whether it be with their finances, whether it be with their health, whether it be with their relationships, whatever is important to them. It helps them kind of bridge these lessons and the ones that I'm going to go through. And the entire reason for making this podcast is to help you, the listener, wherever you're at right now, change yourself or change your circumstances or change something so you're able to bridge the difference between where you are now and where you want to reach, the area that you want to reach in your life, whether it's with, again, maybe it's with a family member, maybe it's with your job, maybe it's with your career, maybe it's with your business, whatever it's with, maybe it's with your pets, whatever the case may be, it's with something in your life that you want to change for the better, that you want to improve, that you want to move to the next level with. I want to help you bridge that gap, and that's the entire reason for this show. Again, at any time, feel free to subscribe to make sure that you're notified of anything I post. Again, you might be listening to this or have gotten to this from Twitter, from LinkedIn, from YouTube, from Facebook, or from Podbean, wherever it's posted. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you're always able to go ahead and listen to these recordings, listen to this podcast. It might end up being visual as well. It might just be auditory, I'm not sure yet, but make sure that you're always able to listen to these, because again, this entire purpose of creating this, the entire reason I wrote my book, and the entire reason I really do what I do in general and how I act out in the world is because I want to help people improve their lives. I love to see people smile. I love to see people happy. I love to bring progress to the world, and I want to help you do that in your own life. So without further ado, I want to kind of cover one of the chapters in my book, because this is going to help me kind of start off with this podcast or this show, whatever you want to call it. Start off with kind of a direction on how I'm going to start flowing with each episode. And I want to start off with the idea of responsibility, because this is one of the biggest areas of my life that I've personally developed to be who I am today. It's the entire reason why I'm in business, why I started my own company, why I have my own book, and all these different things, is that, and I think it's also lacking. I think the idea of responsibility is lacking from the world as a whole. And that's the reason I kind of wrote that as the first chapter, not just because it's impacted myself, but because I've noticed how it's impacted the world around me, because I noticed how the lack of the use of has brought a lot of my own family, many of my friends, and again, I think that my community and the world as a whole, to either a standstill in their own personal circumstance, or to a dulling motion into just doing what's day to day. And again, you can talk about responsibility in a plethora of ways. You can talk about how responsibility maybe is responsible for like how you do your dishes or you do your chores, which are all great responsibilities, or taking care of your kids, whatever it is. But the responsibility that I talk about in the book and that I want to talk about now with yourself is your responsibility for your life as a whole, your responsibility to what direction your life is headed towards. Because quite often, and I've been one to do this as well. I've been someone who's done this, and I see people do it all the time. Is we blame the world for our problems. And again, there are some problems that we can't help, but the majority of what we go through, whether it's poverty, whether it's things with our relationships, sometimes things with our kids, things with our jobs, things with a lot of our life is the reason why it's not where we want it to be is because we don't take responsibility for it. When we blame our circumstances, when it's us who creates those circumstances. What I mean by that, I guess I'll kind of dissect the idea into smaller bits, is I believe, and this is a big belief held by many, if not the majority of the successful people throughout the world, is that you are responsible for basically the majority of your life. You're responsible for your finances, you're responsible for your health, you're responsible for where your kids are at, where you're at, where your spouse is at, and all these different things. And here's how and why that works. So you can take a look at people. Let's just go with an example who I like to use is Eminem. This is how, the reason I'm explaining this is it's because how your circumstances don't define you, you define your circumstances. So you take a look at Eminem, for instance. Eminem, he grew up, for those of you who don't know, which I don't know how you would know, he's kind of a big figure. Eminem grew up with little to no, very little education. I don't think, if I remember right, he graduated the 10th grade or 9th grade, something like that. He didn't have a really good education. He grew up in a very, very strongly poverty-stricken area of Detroit. He was basically practically homeless throughout his life. He moved. He was never in one area. His family was never in one area. He had no father. His mom was constantly addicted and doing drugs. He didn't really have the best influences around him. His life would have started off how a lot of people wish their lives didn't start out as, and it's the very few who have such a rough upbringing. Among other things, he was also bullied nonstop at school. He was put in a coma because of how bad he was physically beat by people at school. He had a very rough upbringing. Yet, obviously, for those of you who know him, which should be the majority, Eminem is one of the biggest successes to ever happen in mankind. He's probably in the top 0.1% percentages of people who have completely removed themselves from their circumstances and became an entirely different person, entirely changed their lives, took care of their family, took care of their friends, took care of the people around them, and created a legacy. Now, if you believe that your circumstances define you, if you believe that something bad that has happened to you is going to define the rest of your life, and if Eminem believed that, then he would have stayed exactly where he was, but he didn't. Because Eminem, whether he realized it or not, took the right actions that produced different results in his life. He could have done a ton of drugs. I mean, he did end up doing drugs, but he could have just done drugs. He could have not gone after his rap career. He could have just done nothing. He could have sulked. He could have done nothing, and he would have stayed in that situation. I guarantee you, he would have stayed in that situation for a very, very long time, and possibly forever, and continued the cycle of people in that situation. His kids would have grew up in that situation and would have continued down a line of people who just keep believing that the circumstances define how they're going to live, so they keep living in those circumstances. But instead, what Eminem did, what many other people do, including myself, is they take a look at what's happening around them. They take a look at why their relationship isn't like it should be. They take a look at why they're struggling financially. They take a look at why they aren't who they want to be as a person, and they change the problems. They change their actions. They change what they're doing, and they then, because of that, over a period of time, they change their circumstances. That is responsibility. Acknowledging that you in fact are most of the time responsible for what's happening around you, and deciding that you're going to change what you're doing to change your circumstances. That is responsibility. And, I will say, there are a lot of people who have a very, very, even much more rough life. There are people who are beaten all the time. There are people who have had some terrible, awful experiences. There are people who are disabled. There are a lot of things that do prevent a very minority amount of people from taking responsibility, or from taking more responsibility than they would be able to otherwise. And I'm acknowledging all those things are true. But for the majority of us, for the majority of people that listen to this or that will listen to this, you don't have those circumstances. Or you might think that you do. Or you might think that something is holding you back, but it's actually not. There are plenty of cases for this. Like, I can use myself. I write about myself in the book. I'll talk about myself, of how I used to have no friends, little to no one liked me at all. I would sit in the lunchroom and I would have like 300 to 400 kids who I would watch and I'd check. I was the only one of all those kids who sat alone. I would try to sit next to other people. I would try to make friends. It didn't work. It didn't work. It never worked. And it seemed like to me, like it might seem like to you because of your own circumstances or because of what you're going through right now, that there's something holding you back, that there's some barrier, that there's something, like life keeps shitting on you. Life keeps doing something to you, or someone keeps doing something to you, or your job keeps sucking, or something keeps doing what you don't want it to do. And it really does seem like it's something that you can't help. It's just going to keep happening because you try and you try and you try. But that's where the point of where if you really take responsibility for it and you realize for yourself, like I did in my situation when I was younger and bullied and all that good stuff, is I decided that even though I was bullied, even though no one liked me, even though yada, 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 all these different things, is I said, you know what, number one, I'm going to keep being myself. Number two, I'm not just going to keep being myself, I'm going to develop myself. I'm going to become likable. I'm going to become something and someone that people look up to. I'm going to become something and someone that people want to become themselves. I want to have friends. I want to have people who I consider like family, really close family that are friends. I want to be more than what people are saying I can be right now. I want to change my life. And I did. And the reason I did was because I started taking different actions. I started learning about myself. I started learning about what I could become. I started learning about how to develop myself as a character. And that's what you have to do. That's what you have to do if you want to change your current circumstances. So right now, you could be struggling a lot with your money. But you can ask yourself, what am I doing with my money? Again, it comes back to, what am I doing with my money? What am I doing wrong? Not what is the world doing wrong to me, because you can't change the world, but you can't change what the world is currently doing. But you can change what you're doing that will eventually affect the world. So you can, again, I know plenty of people right now, and I'm very strict with where I spend my money in certain places. Sometimes I have fun with it, but not usually. I use it where it's useful. But a lot of people, in this country, have a very, very rough time when it comes to their finances. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Again, some people are born in very poor situations. Some people fight out of those poor situations. But my point is, I'm saying is that there are people who it's hard for you to get out of them. But if you take a look at, and this is where the people that do get out of that poverty situation, it's what they do is, where are you spending your money? There's a study done that I just read 2 days ago that explained that the majority of people, the vast majority, I'll tell you the percentage of people, guess the percentage of the people who make below $16,000 a year in the United States, how much they spend on lottery tickets or, some kind of similar scratch offs or whatever. It's $400 a year on average they spend. That is, let's see, if you take 16,000, that is 16,000 divided by 10% would be $1,600. Divide that by five, you'll get $400 or $3. It's around, I'm guessing around 3% of their total income they spend on lottery tickets. This is rounded up to 5. Say the people who spend more. It's between 3 and 5% of their total income they spend on lottery tickets. Think about all the money that we waste, that you might waste on junk food, or food that you don't even eat, or you spend on eating out all the time. That you spend on having an extra special Uber TV package, even though you only watch probably 10 TV programs or 10 TV shows. How much time do you spend wasting watching TV? How much money do you spend wasting on whatever the case may be? You get what I'm saying. Is you have to take a look at what you are doing wrong so you know what you can improve upon and do right and take responsibility for changing that circumstance. So with money, again, you can stop spending money on pop alone, and that'll save you a couple $100, probably a month, if you don't buy pop every day, or you don't buy chew every day, or alcohol, or cigarettes, whatever the case may be. If you stop one of your addictions, if you stop something similar, you can change a financial situation in a very quick manner. If some people start investing a little bit and starting a side business, and starting to be an affiliate, and producing their own course, which you can do for free and offer for free and make money from. You don't offer it for free, but you can create it for free and make money, make commissions off it. There's all these different things. You can write a book for free. You can go to Amazon.com and publish a book for free and make money from the book and convince a few people to buy the book. You're creating some money. My point is that there are things that you can do, whether you realize it currently or not, that can bring you to where you want to go, that will allow you to become responsible instead of blaming your environment and letting it do as it will. You can take responsibility for where you're at right now and change where you're going to become. Because again, if you keep doing what you're doing now, what's going to change for you? What's going to change for your relationship if it keeps going like it is? What's going to change for your business or your career or your side hustle or for your kids or for yourself personally? If you don't move from where you're at right now, I think you just stay stuck. Because if you're staying stuck, you're going backwards. If you're staying in one place, you're going backwards. And obviously, if you're going backwards, you're going backwards. My point is, what's going to cost you to not take responsibility versus what will it cost you to take responsibility? Because that's one of the other dilemmas people face, is they don't want to take responsibility because they think the cost is too great. But think about right now, what will happen if you try to change where you're at right now, whether it's your finances, whether it's with your spouse, whatever the circumstances. Think about what it will cost you to try. And think about the years of, vice versa. Think about vice versa, the months, possibly years, possibly decades of pain and anguish you will go through if you don't take responsibility and you let your problems and your issues and the things you're facing right now continue to do as they will. What is that going to cost you? So I really want you to think about that too when you consider if you're going to take yourself up by your bootstraps, the saying people don't really like very much, and decide that you're going to be responsible for where you're going to go, that you're going to act it out right now and change where you're at right now. And that's just kind of an intro to responsibility and why I think it's important, because it truly can change you. It can change who you are as a person. It often will. Jordan Peterson, for those who don't know who Jordan Peterson is, he's a very, very intelligent intellectual. He wrote a book called 12 Rules for Life, An Antidote to Chaos, that sold 3 million copies worldwide. He's traveled the world now. He's a brilliant professor. He's a psychologist, and he's someone who delved deeper into this idea. That's one of the things he talks a lot about as well, almost throughout the entire book. I think the kind of overarching idea is that responsibility and the approach to it will change who you are as a person. It's just not going to change your environment and the things around you. It's going to change who you are as a person. Because in order to change the things around you, you have to develop yourself as a person to act and think differently. And that's one of the biggest differences, I guess you could say, not just between the rich and the poor, and this is what I cover in my book. It's not the difference between the rich and the poor. It's not just the difference between the happy and the joyful and the depressed. It's not just the difference between the fit and the obese. It's the difference that separates you from reaching there are a lot of other things that also affect your life and you reaching where you want to become. But taking responsibility is the number one, I think, first action you must take to doing so. Because if you don't, you're kind of letting, like I said, the world dictate what's going to happen to you. I don't know about you, but if the world screwed you over already, I don't think you want the world to screw you over anymore. That's kind of my take on responsibility. This is a small little snippet, because it is so important for your life. And if you don't take control of it, you are left with not much. You're left with the world controlling you. And that I've faced a lot of people with that point of view. I talked to one of them was this girl in a class I had in gym class a few years ago. She thought basically the world controlled how she felt and how she acted towards other people. So this now woman was consistently all the time. She's just treated everyone around her like shit. Didn't treat people very well. Didn't probably treat herself very well, and was always mad and angry. And one day I literally asked her, I'm like, because she was being rude to me and a few other classmates, and I'm like, what is your deal? What is wrong with you? Why do you treat people like this? Why do you treat me like this? I never did anything to her. I never was rude to her. I was always trying to help her, be nice to her, and other people were too. And she says to me, my house burned down 3 years ago. I can act and do as I want. Isn't that amazing? I don't mean amazing in a good way. I mean amazing as in, it's incredible how horrible people will become because they think that something bad done to them in their past or something going on right now decides how they should feel and act, especially when it damages other people. And that's also one of the biggest things. Some people will listen to this and they'll not change anything in their life because they think they don't need to be responsible for what they do. But that decision affects a lot more than you think and a lot more than you know. Like I said, it affected her character. It affected how she felt. It affected how she lived day to day in this constant pain and anguish that her house burned down 3 years ago, and she decided that meant that she could do and treat people as she wanted and as she wished. And she let the burning of the house be responsible for how she acted. She blamed upon that, but it was really her conscious decision to keep living in that moment, to keep letting that affect her. And this happens all the time. There's other people who I know who blame this or that. Like some people blame, well, I've always been big, when they try to, they want to change their health or something like that. And there's a guy who I read about in my book who has no arms and no legs. And he's pretty in good shape. He swims. He speaks across the world. There's many different people with the worst circumstances even that you can even compare yourself to if you're really struggling with the idea of responsibility and how to change it. Look at the hardest struggling people in the world. I mean, the absolute most horrendous circumstances. And look at those people and how some of those success stories, you can look up success stories and see where people have come from and how they've completely changed their lives for the better because they stopped blaming their circumstances. They stopped blaming the world. Maybe I'm sounding like I'm on a rant on the same topic without kind of switching. But again, I really want to drill it into your head as a bad verbiage to use. I want you to understand, to fully understand what the difference is when you finally decide to take responsibility and change your life around you, because it can be the world of difference. I know it has been for me. I know it has been for my family. It has been for a lot of different things and a lot of different people I know. Other than that, I think that's kind of responsibility, and like I said before, as I was going to end it, in a small snippet of what it can do for you, how you should think about it, and really to spend some of your own time deciding how you're going to think about it, because it's beyond the full utility of taking responsibility for each part of your life. Is the potential that you can change by doing so is giant, misunderstood, not understood as well. I want to say that in the future, I do plan on having many guests for the podcast. I am going to start bringing people, inviting them online and offline as well. And I really want to make sure that the rest of this podcast, rest of this show, the Jon Weberg Show, as I develop it farther and more forward, is something that helps you change your life and makes you at least think about something differently or in a different way, that will change something for you, something for the better, just a little something. Even if you improve something 1% per day, 1% per week, in a few weeks or in a few months, you would be a completely different person. Your circumstance would be completely different, and hopefully for the better. So I want to thank you for listening. I hope you have an absolutely incredible day. This is the Jon Weberg Show. make sure you subscribe, make sure you follow me, make sure you do whatever you got to do in the social handle or whatever it is to make sure you can watch and listen more. And there's going to be visual with this. I want to hopefully surpass Joe Rogan. That's a leap to do, but I want to have an impact with this. I want to help as many people as possible. So I thank you for listening. Feel free to share this around, share it wherever you wish, share it with your friends, share it with your family, share it on Facebook, share it on social media, whatever you want to do. And I hope this gave you some kind of insight to a little bit farther in your own life. So have an amazing day, and we'll see you next on the Jon Weberg Show.